Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Waha, Rakakwadash. In Hebrew, that's giving all praises to the Most High, whose true name in Hebrew is Yahweh, and the name of his only begotten Son, whose true name in Hebrew is Yahweh Shai, and the Holy Spirit, which is the Rakakwadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles and the Holy Spirit, who taught us his truth. Honors to the brethren that's laboring, doing the work to push the gospel, risking their life and freedom to do so. Peace and blessings to the hopeful elect, which will be 1/3 of you Israelites, according to scripture, who will be the Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, and Seminole Indians, who make up the lost 12 tribes of Israel, who will be seeking their salvation by returning back to the Most High, by hearing and believing on his word during these last days, so that he will have mercy on us in judgment. So we're back with another lesson through the power and spirit of Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai. This is going to be World War III update number 48. I think I'm going to title it Standoff at the Border, Possible Civil War. Yeah, this is World War III update number 48, and I may title it Standoff at the Border, Possible Civil War. Yeah, because World War III, that don't just include these other countries outside of America going to war with America, or these outside countries going to war with one another. There's going to be all kind of wars popping off right here in the streets of America. Different classes of people going to war, different branches of the law enforcement going to war, and that's what we're about to show in this lesson. So we're going to get started with our first video, and I got some information we're going to jump back and forth to throughout the video. So we're going to let this first one roll. And the backdrop of what's going on at the border, Title 42 ended last year. So there's been tens of thousands of migrants crossing the U.S.-Mexico border monthly. Tens of thousands. We had a few million by now. They spotted Russians, Chinese, Afghans, Indians, different Africans, Pakistanians, Iranians crossing the border. So that's the big issue. And the federal government has been getting a lot of backlash for letting the border stay open and not enforcing restrictions at the border. They've been getting a lot of backlash from the local and state governments and from American citizens. So we're going to let this roll.
Texas is blocking federal agents from processing migrants in a public area of Eagle Pass.
You heard that. Texas, let's round it back.
Texas is blocking federal agents from processing migrants in a public area of Eagle Pass.
So Texas is blocking federal agents from processing migrants. Texas blocking federal agents. I had to do some reading and some studying this morning, which I never understood this, but it makes sense once I read into it. So within the United States, you got a federal government, and then you got your local and state governments. And this is a breakdown between the two. The federal government, they can declare war, they manage foreign relations, and they oversee trade in between states and with other countries. So pretty much the federal government, they govern the United States as a whole. And when the federal government passes a law, it's for the whole United States. But then there's a balance of power, so that the government don't have all the power. There's a state government, which the state government, is what it sounds like. They just govern the state. They manage affairs that take place in their local state. So, for example, one of the many responsibilities of the state government would be to manage public health and safety, and they oversee trade within the state. Different prosecutions, things that happen in the state. That's why in the pandemic, you had different states who would drop the mask mandate, but you had different states like Texas that drop the mask mandate, pick it back up, drop it, pick it back up. while you had other states like New York, I think they were more strict with the mask mandates. So it's a balance of power. So the federal government can pass a law, but the state government can ratify or reject them laws and appeal them laws, and they have to go through a process, not giving the federal government all the power. So the government, they govern the United States as a whole, and then you got the state government who govern their individual states, but might try to push back against the federal government depending on what's best for the state. And what the federal and state government got and what they both share is they both can make and enforce laws. So different states, different gun laws, that's because of the state governments. But now we know that the state of Texas is blocking federal agents. Well, the federal government has a military, the U.S. Army, Border Patrol, the Navy, the Marines, etc. But the state government has a military as well. That would be the National Guard. So the Texas National Guard is blocking the U.S. military from bringing in more migrants because it's the federal government, the U.S. Army, that's letting these migrants in. But you got your Texas locals along with the Texas National Guard that's like, hey, what the federal government doing? Like, stop letting these people in. Start arresting them. But that's why she said, Texas is blocking federal agents from processing the migrants. You got the state government rising up against the federal government.
Texas is blocking federal agents from processing migrants in a public area of Eagle Pass, just a mile away from the U.S.-Mexico border. The move is the latest escalation between the state and federal government over the nation's immigration policy.
See, she said between the state and federal government.
Texas's Republican Governor Greg Abbott deployed National Guard troops to the park. They are now preventing U.S. Border Patrol agents from entering and patrolling the area. The federal government previously used the space to hold migrants in a staging area before further processing. CBS News immigration and political reporter Camilo Montoya Galvez joins us now. Camilo, how is the state of Texas able to do this?
Hi, Elaine. This really is an extraordinary standoff between Texas and the Biden administration. Texas National Guard members, as we speak, have been deployed by Governor Greg Abbott to take control of this.
So the Texas governor, Greg Abbott, deployed his National Guard to the border. So the state of Texas, the state government, is taking matters into their own hands, rising up against the federal government.
Park in Eagle Pass, Texas, where Border Patrol had been holding migrants in a staging area, as you underscored. And right now, Texas National Guard soldiers and vehicles are actively denying Border Patrol agents as well as federal National Guard members access to roughly 2.5 miles of the U.S.-Mexico border. According to federal officials who spoke with CBS News, this means that Border Patrol agents cannot access this area, Elaine, to process migrants, including those who may be in distress, who are experiencing a medical emergency, for example. They cannot patrol that area or conduct surveillance as well. These are, after all, Elaine, federal responsibilities. And in terms of the legality of these actions, that is still very much an open question. Governor Abbott has previously said that he has the authority to take sweeping actions to deter illegal crossings, but this is certainly, Elaine, his most drastic move yet to challenge the Biden administration's authority on immigration.
So the Biden administration is the federal government. Greg Abbott, the state of Texas National Guard, that would be the state government. So pretty much the state government is running off federal agents. The federal agents being ran off the block. And you got Texas that's taking over the border to stop all these migrants from crossing into the U.S. The state is blocking the federal agents, from getting into their vehicles, running them off the border, not letting them do what they're supposed to do. So the question is, how can the state of Texas, Greg Abbott, defy the federal government like that? And how far can they actually go?
How is the White House responding to this, Camilo?
Well, the White House actually issued a statement just recently, Elaine. I want to read that to our viewers and our audiences. The White House is accusing Governor Abbott of trying to interfere with immigration and border enforcement, saying that the governor is continuing his extreme political stunts that not only seek to demonize and dehumanize people, but that also make it harder and more dangerous for Border Patrol to do their job. So this is clearly the latest escalation in this feud between President Biden and Governor Abbott. The Biden administration.
So they're saying that Greg Abbott, the state governor of Texas, is interfering with the federal government at the border, making their job harder and more dangerous. Because what happened, some migrants came up dead. And what's being said is that the Texas National Guard was blocking the federal government from helping those migrants. It's no telling what happened, but that's what started this up. That's one of the things that escalated this standoff. So you got this standoff between the federal and state government. So we're going to go to one more video, then we're going to jump into some scriptures.
Battle over whether individual states can take matters into their own hands when it comes.
See what he said? Can individual states take matters into their own hands? So if the federal government is doing one thing, can the state government, just go take matters into their own hand? F what the federal government is doing, we're going to handle this situation ourselves. That's what Texas is doing. Because these migrants been coming over by the millions. So let's start over and continue.
The battle over whether individual states can take matters into their own hands when it comes to border security. That issue now centered on a public park in South Texas.
So the thing is, with the state government, with Texas state government is saying that all these migrants coming over here is a public health issue. It's a safety issue for the public. You got all these undocumented migrants, just stand wherever. They saying, that's going to add to the spread of disease and illnesses. That's going to increase the famine. That may increase the crime rate. Now you got all these homeless migrants with nowhere to go, flooding the streets. So the state government, again, is saying it's a public health and safety issue for all these people to be coming over here. So why is the federal government allowing them to come over here with little to no restriction? So Greg Abbott, the Texas state governor, taking matter into his own hands, deploy his National Guard to the border, pushing back the federal agents.
Of the Texas National Guard have taken over the area, and they're refusing orders from the Biden administration to let U.S. border agents in.
National correspondent Mara Siriani is tracking this story for us this morning. Hey, Mara, good morning.
Yeah, guys, good morning. We have some new images from overnight we'll show you in just a second, but safe to say that tensions are certainly escalating between Texas state officials and the federal government. Troopers there are actually now arresting migrants in the Shelby Park area for the first time since the state took control of that area last week. So
Since the Texas National Guard took over that area, the Texas National Guard started arresting migrants against the orders of the federal government. Federal government wasn't arresting these people, but the state government, the Texas National Guard, is arresting them.
I should pull up a map here of what we're talking about. Again, this is a Shelby Park area along the U.S.-Mexico border. The Texas National Guard has now taken over this park in the city of Eagle Pass, and their troopers have also been refusing access to Border Patrol agents. They've also put up a fence there, but this is that new video. Just before 11 o'clock last night, a spokesman with the Texas Department of Public Safety posting the images on X. See, shows migrants here being handcuffed and then hauled off by authorities with the caption, quote, "Under the authority of Governor Greg Abbott's border disaster declaration, troopers are arresting illegal immigrants for criminal trespass at Shelby Park." He goes on to say, quote, "Troopers are arresting single adult men and women," and says the state of Texas will remain proactive in curbing illegal border crossings between the ports of entry. So Lieutenant Chris Oliveira is explaining further the arrests are taking place on private land where the landowner granted the state authority to apparently make these arrests. And it all comes on the heels of the Biden administration informing the Texas state officials that they had until the end of the day Wednesday to stop blocking federal Border Patrol agents access to a 2.5-mile stretch of land along the U.S.-Mexico border.
So the federal government told the state government, Texas, the Texas, what are they called? The Texas National Guard, that they had to stand down, that they had to step back. And they gave them a certain deadline because they went over there, took over the border crisis, started arresting people, started bringing order to the situation.
Included that stretch of land near Shelby Park where a woman and 2 children drowned last week in the Rio Grande. So Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, in a letter to Homeland Security, said the state plans to continue ignoring orders from federal officials to cease and desist. The state, like I mentioned, even putting up a fence now and has Texas National Guard members manning the fence and manning that gate, again, preventing Border Patrol agents on the federal level from doing their job. So the Biden administration says that Border Patrol should be the job of the federal government. Texas state officials say the federal government's not doing its job, so that's why they are stepping in. In the meantime, though, the Department of Justice also stepping in, filing an injunction to get the Supreme Court to intervene here and get federal agents back into the park. An appeals court, though, ordered the agents to stop removing razor wire while legal challenges played out. And again, AG Paxton last night responding to all of this.
And that's why you see the headline here is Texas versus Biden administration. In other words, the state government against the federal government. The state government feel like that the U.S. government is not doing their job, so they stepping in. They feel like the federal agents, the Border Patrol, not doing their job, so the Texas governor sent in the Texas National Guard. All right, so we're going to get into the scriptures. And what I pulled up right here was the list that I've been generating on different types of emergencies and how they can lead to a lockdown. I don't have it here, but I do have civil unrest. So in other words, there could be a border crisis that could lead to a lockdown. It could be an air quality crisis. It could lead to a lockdown. A water contamination can lead to a lockdown. A health and pandemic emergency can lead to a lockdown. Well, we got civil unrest / race wars that could lead to a lockdown. You could fit the border crisis in here, but I'm gonna have to make a new one for the border crisis because, at the border, it's not just Border Patrol fighting against the cartel. Now it's looking like you're gonna have the federal government clash with the state government, generating a civil war because it's not just the state government that's upset. It's your Texas residents, Texas locals, your liberals, your patriotic Americans that's upset with all these migrants crossing the border into America. But we're going to get this in Matthew 12:25. And Yahweh knew their thoughts and said to them, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation. And every city or house divided against itself shall not stand. What's this kingdom? America. It's divided against itself. America is more divided than it's ever been. You got different race wars. You got class wars, the poor versus the rich. You got war concerning the pandemic, those who took the medicine versus those who didn't take the medicine, Democrats versus Republicans. Now you got the federal government against the state government. And this is the theme of a movie that's coming out. I'm going to show the trailer in Lord Wood in just a few minutes. And the theme of that movie is the clash between the federal and the state government that led to a massive civil war in America, and it come out in April. But yeah, every kingdom that's divided cannot stand. And we see America is becoming more and more divided for a number of reasons. And if Satan cast out Satan, he is divided against himself. How shall then his kingdom stand? Who is Satan casting out Satan? That's Esau versus Esau. You got Edomite soldiers kicking other Edomite soldiers off the block. Telling them, you're not doing your job, we got it. So how then can America stand if they fighting against themselves? And then that's not even to mention your state militias, your residents for all these different states, they upset too. Because these migrants getting all kind of housing, health insurance, license to carry a firearm, money, cell phones that the US people can't even get. All right, so I think we're gonna jump to this movie trailer real quick. We're gonna watch like maybe the first minute of it.
19 states have seceded.
The United States Army ramps up activity.
The White House issued warnings to the Western forces as well as the Florida Alliance.
The three-term president assures the uprising will be dealt with swiftly.
Let me know if you want to try anything on.
Are you guys aware there's like a pretty huge civil war going on all across America?
We just try to stay out. With what we see on the news, seems like it's for the best.
Citizens of America, the so-called Western forces of Texas and California have suffered a very great defeat at the hands of the United States military.
So you heard that. He said the Western forces of Texas and California, that's the state government, suffered a defeat from the hands of the U.S. military. That's the federal government. So you had the U.S. military go in and overthrow the state government of Texas and California. That includes defeating the local law enforcement, defeating the militias, and defeating the National Guard for both of those states. We're going to rewind that back, and then we're going to watch a little more.
So-called Western forces of Texas and California have suffered a very great defeat at the hands of the United States military.
So the Western forces of Texas and Texas and California suffer a grave defeat by the hands of the U.S. military.
Mr. President, do you regret the use of airstrikes against American citizens? We're moving to D.C. today.
We need to go down there.
They shoot journalists on sight in the Capitol. Every instinct in me says this is death. Bloody.
Every time I survived the war zone, I thought I was sending a warning home. Don't do this. But here we are.
There's some kind of misunderstanding here. What? Well, you're American, okay? Okay. What kind of American are you? You don't.
See, that's the point. He said, this is a misunderstanding. He said, I'm an American. And then that soldier said, what kind of American are you? Are you an American that's standing behind your local state government? Or are you an American that's standing behind the federal government in the U.S. military? Edomite on Edomite crime. But yeah, this movie comes out in April. It's called Civil War. Now, to continue with the scriptures before we close out, we're going to hit Isaiah 19:2. And I will say Egyptians against Egyptians. This is not Egyptians over there in Egypt. This is concerning Americans. That's why the pyramid is on the back of the dollar. America is spiritual Egypt. So in other words, the Lord will set the American people against other Americans. They shall fight, everyone against his brother and everyone against his neighbor, city against city, kingdom against kingdom. So your American people going to be fighting one against another, every man fighting against his brother, against his neighbor, your state government fighting against the federal government, local law enforcement, and the state militias and the National Guard fighting against the U.S. military. It's going to be a civil war right here in America. And that's all part of World War III, which is why this is a World War III update. And then continuing, you saw the backdrop of the movie. So we're going to hit 2nd Ezra chapter 15, verse 14. Woe to the world and to them that dwell therein, for the sword and their destruction draweth nigh. We see the sword is about to be let loose through America, which the sword is just a broad term for military, weaponry, purging, death in the streets. And one people shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands. What's the amount of their sword? AR-15, 9mm, AK-47. So you're going to have different races, different classes of people fighting against one another. The federal government fighting against the state government, fighting against U.S. citizens rising up against the government. That's why the next verse says, for this shall be sedition among men. That's men rising up against their government. And we see that going on with Texas right now, that the state government is defying orders from the federal government and sending in their own military and their own law enforcement because they feel like the U.S. military and the Border Patrol is not doing their job. Well, you got a migrant crisis in California as well. So you got the two biggest states, with the biggest issue on migrants crossing the border. And you got these two biggest states, according to the movie, who's going to rise up against the federal government, creating a civil war. For this shall be sedition among men and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes. That's the government. And that's what's going on right now in Texas. Greg Abbott, the Texas state governor, he's not regarding the U.S. federal government. He's not regarding the U.S. military. And what? In the course of their actions shall stand in their power. So the state government is taking matters into their own hands. And then you got a lot of liberals, patriotic Americans who's standing behind the Texas state government. So if this escalates, you're going to have Texas militias and Texas residents who are mere U.S. citizens. They going to strap up, pick up their guns. They probably going to go to the border too. Because Texas is, I believe, the state with the most owned firearms. This state is known for its open carry, for anybody. So what? The course of their actions shall stand in their power. And what's that power? That's the firepower. So people going to feel like, well, I got enough guns, I got enough ammo, let me go do something about that. That's their actions standing in their firepower. Yeah, that's why it says a man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able. This is going to turn into a lockdown. This border crisis could turn into a lockdown. We're going to have another pandemic that's going to turn into a lockdown. They saying that the migrants is bringing varicella, tuberculosis, and other diseases and illnesses into America. All right, so now we're going to also jump to the book of Isaiah, chapter 47:1. Come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. That's America. Sit on the ground, there is no throne. Sitting on the ground, meaning you no longer in that high position, but you sitting on the ground as a servant. So what? America's going to go from a first world to a third world country. O daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate. And that's America. This place is not the place that it was, 30, 40 years ago, the American dream. This place is finished and is ran down. Take the millstones and grind meal, uncover thy locks, and make bare the leg. When something is bare, it's exposed. So the federal government is being exposed by giving these migrants all these benefits, letting them in with no restrictions. And they being called out by the state governments to not be doing their job. Uncover the thigh, pass over the rivers, which the rivers is a metaphor for the people. So Babylon is being exposed before its citizens. thy nakedness shall be uncovered. Yeah, America is being exposed on all levels. Thy shame shall be seen. Is being seen by the U.S. people, making the people despise the U.S. government even more. I will take vengeance and I will not meet thee as a man. So yeah, and that was the backdrop of the movie. And also going down to verse 5, sit thou silent, get thee into darkness, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called the Lady of Kingdoms. Then you see America had completely collapsed in that trailer. This place was no more a kingdom, no more an empire. It had digressed. It was a third world country. No different than the Middle East, etc. Hey, so that's World War III update number 48. You got a standoff at the border, the state government versus the federal government. Can this turn to a civil war? We'll see. Lord willing, it was edifying. Till next time. Shalom.